Welcome to MD Shohag DON Studio. Glad you're here. Let's jump into the exciting world of diplomacy, which is a pivotal part of international relations, diplomacy, and politics. Diplomacy is super cool. Let's jump into the basics, missions, key terms, and the different levels. Ready to explore this together? Get ready for an awesome journey ahead. So, what exactly is diplomacy? At its heart, diplomacy is the art and practice of conducting negotiations between representatives of different groups or states. It's the primary way countries manage their relationships, solve disputes peacefully, and work together on shared goals. Think of it as the engine room of international politics, where communication and strategy prevent conflicts and build bridges. Now, let's break this down into our three main topics. First, we'll look at the structures that make diplomacy happen on the ground. The diplomatic missions. The most well-known diplomatic mission is the embassy. An embassy is the main diplomatic representation of one country in another, and it's headed by an ambassador, the highest-ranking diplomat. Within an embassy, there's a clear hierarchy. It starts with the attaché, who is often a specialist in a certain field like military or culture. Moving up the ladder, you have the third secretary, then the second secretary, and the first secretary. Above them are the counselor and the minister, all leading up to the ambassador who represents their head of state. Next we have the High Commission. This is essentially an embassy, but it's used specifically between countries that are members of the Commonwealth. For instance, the diplomatic mission between Bangladesh and India is a High Commission. The structure is very similar to an embassy, but the head is called a High Commissioner. The hierarchy includes attachés, secretaries, a counselor, and a deputy high commissioner, who is second in command to the high commissioner. Finally, there's the consulate or consulate general. While embassies and high commissions handle political relations between governments, consulates focus on the needs of citizens and trade. They issue visas, help their citizens who are traveling or living abroad, and promote commercial ties. A consulate is headed by a consul, and a larger one is led by a consul general. The hierarchy here goes from attaché to vice consul, then consul, and finally the consul general. Now that we understand the where of diplomacy, let's explore the what, the special language diplomats use. These terms are crucial for understanding international news and events. Let's start with some key roles. The ambassador, as we mentioned, is the top diplomat. But there's also an ambassador at large, a special envoy who isn't assigned to one country but tackles specific issues or regions. When you see Excellency, it's a formal title of respect for ambassadors and other high-ranking officials. The chief diplomat between Commonwealth nations is the High Commissioner. And representing the Vatican, we have the nuncio. What about when the ambassador isn't around? A charge d'affaires takes charge of the embassy temporarily. The office building where the embassy staff works is called the chancery. And the official letters a diplomat presents to the host country to prove their authority are called credentials. Diplomacy is all about agreements. An accord is a formal agreement between nations. Sometimes an agreement is made ad referendum, which means it's temporary and needs final approval from higher authorities back home. You might have heard of asylum. This is protection granted by a country to someone fleeing persecution. A special type is diplomatic asylum, which is when asylum is granted inside an embassy itself. Communication is key. The diplomatic bag is a sealed pouch carrying official documents. It has special protections and cannot be opened by the host country. The entire community of foreign diplomats in a host country is known as the diplomatic corps, but what happens when things go wrong? If a diplomat is declared persona non grata, it means they are no longer welcome and must leave the country. A recall is when a diplomat's own government calls them home. And sanctions are penalties, like trade restrictions, imposed by one or more countries to pressure another country to change its behavior. A few more interesting terms. Good offices is when a neutral third party helps two conflicting nations talk. Shuttle diplomacy is a famous example, where a mediator, like Henry Kissinger in the 1970s, travels back and forth between rival states to broker a deal. And a fun one. Diplomatic illness is the classic excuse of pretending to be sick to politely avoid a meeting or event. Now for our final section. The different levels or tracks of diplomacy. These aren't just about official meetings. Diplomacy operates on many layers. The most formal is track I diplomacy. This is the official stuff, government-to-government negotiations. Think of high-level talks between Bangladesh and India over water-sharing agreements. These are conducted by official representatives like ministers and ambassadors. Then we have Track 2 diplomacy, also called second track diplomacy. This is unofficial. It involves influential non-government individuals like academics, retired officials, and experts. They hold dialogues to explore solutions to conflicts without the pressure of official negotiations. It's a way to brainstorm and build trust away from the public eye. When we combine these, we get hybrid forms. Track 1.5 diplomacy brings together both government officials and non-official experts in a semi-official setting. Dual-track diplomacy uses Track 1 and Track 2 channels simultaneously. And multi-track diplomacy is the whole package, combining government, non-government, and citizen-level efforts for a comprehensive approach to peace. What about the people? Track 3 diplomacy involves grassroots efforts. It's about building peace from the ground up through citizen exchanges, cultural programs, and NGO activities. It's the people-to-people connections that foster understanding between nations. Now let's look at some strategic approaches. Public diplomacy is all about shaping a country's image abroad through media, cultural exchanges, and international broadcasting. A famous example is ping-pong diplomacy, where the US and China used table tennis matches in the 1970s to thaw relations. Some diplomatic strategies are tied to foreign policy. Bangladesh's Look East diplomacy, for example, is a policy focused on strengthening ties with East and Southeast Asian countries. On the other hand, gunboat diplomacy is a more aggressive approach, using the threat of military force to achieve diplomatic goals. Economic power is also a major tool. Dollar diplomacy refers to using financial aid and investment to gain political influence, a strategy historically used by the United States. Similarly, checkbook diplomacy involves offering financial incentives to win support, for instance, in UN votes. In recent years, you might have heard of China's wolf warrior diplomacy, a term for its assertive and outspoken diplomatic style. This contrasts with the historical open-door policy promoted by the US towards China, which advocated for equal trade opportunities for all nations. Finally, let's touch on the setting of diplomacy. Sideline diplomacy happens informally during big international events, like two leaders having a quick chat on the sidelines of a UN summit. In contrast, megaphone diplomacy is when negotiations are conducted publicly through the media, which can often increase tensions rather than solve them. And that's our comprehensive look at the world of diplomacy. From the structure of embassies to the secret language of diplomats and the many tracks they operate on, it's a complex and vital field that shapes our world every single day. Thank you so much for joining me today in MD. I hope you found this breakdown helpful. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one.